Hello everyone, and welcome to this month's webinar. We're going to be talking about money worries in the workplace, but before we do, I'm just going to give it a couple more seconds to let some more people join. And if you can, in the chat box, let us know if you can see both me and Lloyd and hear me loud and clear as well. So just give me a yes in the chat box, a hello, whatever you want to say. Good to see you here, Sharon. We've got Anna, good to see you here as well. We've got Vicky. Good old Sam is out and about, ready to drop you with more resources in today's session. We've got Madison, Rebecca, got lots and lots of people joining now, guys. Debbie, good to see you here as well. Over 100 people too. So today's session, as we've said, is going to be on money worries in the workplace and how HR and businesses can better support the financial well-being of their employees. And we're very lucky that we're joined by Lloyd. This is not going to be me giving you any financial advice. Do not worry whatsoever. But today's session is going to be similar to another session that we run with our head of psychology, Dr. Lauren Callahan, on suicide and crisis management in the workplace. It's going to be a Q&A between me and Lloyd, and you're going to have an opportunity to jump in and ask some questions as well. So before we start, I'm going to bring Lloyd in. Lloyd, do you want to give yourself a little bit of an introduction to everyone here on the webinar today about who you are and what you do?
Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a good day already. So I am a financial advisor. I've been a financial advisor since 2013. And I run a business called Invictus Wealth Consultants, and we are based in not so sunny Horsham at the moment.
Is it not sunny for you there?
It's not. It's overcast.
We've got a nice day here, and I'm not that far from you, so we might send it your way soon. But yeah, no. So me and Lloyd we connected about, would you say about a year ago now, Lloyd? I'd say maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah, maybe about a year and a half ago, I would have thought.
And Lloyd's really bought into what we do at Everymind at work and has, become a friend and is someone that I trust to join us on this session today to give you guys some advice. So we'll dive a little bit more into that in just a bit, Lloyd. But I'm Paul, the founder of Everymind at Work, and Everymind at Work is a mental health partner for organizations ranging from organizations like the Co-op and Weights down to some SMEs as well. And really our mission is to just try and encourage conversations of mental health in the workplace and proactively support your employees and support you guys as well, HR professionals, if you're on this. We know there's a lot of overwhelm, there's a lot of confusion about what to do with mental health and well-being, and we're here to support you with that. And mental health is very close to my heart after personally losing my dad to suicide when I was 18, and we're a very, very purpose-driven business as well. So I'd say you're in good hands, but I don't want to sound arrogant by saying that. But if you've joined our recent sessions, you'll know in every single webinar that we deliver, we give away some free resources for you, for your employees. And in the last session, we gave away 2 self-awareness PDF handouts, the Wheel of Life, and also a values exercise. If you joined us in the last session, you would have done that exercise as well. You can also go back and get that if you already haven't got that. If you just go to everymindatwork.com/burnout, you're going to be able to download those free resources to help your employees manage burnout at this difficult time as well. Can I just get a yes if you was on last month's webinar? Just would like to see how many of you was on last month's webinar. Cool, so seeing some yeses coming in. Nice. And as always, we wanted to up the ante once again and give you some more free resources and free value in today's session as well. And what we've done is we've actually worked with Lloyd, creating a 5-day video series, a financial health check for your employees. And this was something that we recorded, I'd say, over a month ago, wasn't it, Lloyd? And it was creating 5 videos that would be beneficial for your employees to help them really get on top of their finances and manage that almost financial strain that a lot of them might be experiencing. So as simple as this, at the end of this webinar, guys, we're going to pop the link into the chat box. That link, you can share it with your employees. You can share it however you want to share it. They'll be taken straight to this 5-day video series, and these videos will definitely help them. Lloyd, do you want to elaborate a little bit more on what they're going to get from these videos in particular?
Yeah, so the idea of the 5 sessions is really just to enable people to start sort of reviewing and looking at the basic things that people can look at from a sort of just simple budgeting point of view, setting goals, and really trying to help people and empower them just to sort of start taking more control over their finances and evaluating where they are and where they want to go.
And also as well, just to highlight, with every single video, there's also a downloadable guide, a downloadable PDF. So Again, if they haven't got time to watch the videos and they're only short videos, they can grab the guide, download the resources, and there's lots of important information in there too. So stay in the end of this webinar. We'll pop that link in the chat box and you can use it, share it with your employees, and hopefully it's some free value that they're going to benefit from as well. Before we also do that, before we also crack on, I've been asked to ask you this question, guys. What would you like to see us discuss in future sessions? So just put that in the chat box now. What topics would you like us to discuss? What experts could we bring on to help you help your employees? So just think about that now. Put it in the chat box whenever you're ready. What would you like to see us discuss in future sessions? We've already spoken about imposter syndrome in the past, crisis management, dealing with burnout. We're obviously talking about financial well-being now as well. But it's really, really important for us that we figure out a little bit more about what you'd like to see so we can try and deliver as much value to you as possible in these future sessions. So we're getting lots of good suggestions coming in at the moment. And I'm going to leave that to the team to pick up. But keep them coming in, guys. If you can think of anything, just keep putting them in the chat box and we're going to pick those up. And hopefully we're going to start to deliver you some more topics that you're obviously going to be interested in as well. Good stuff. So moving on to financial well-being, a recent survey by Salary Finance highlighted that 40% of UK employees are worried about money more so than their relationships, health or career. That for me is quite a staggering statistic. This was a recent study that obviously Salary Finance did. 40% of UK employees are worried about money more so than relationships, health or career. So we're already starting to see here from this one statistic how much of an impact financial concerns have on employees and how much that can impact their overall mental health. And then even more staggering, I think, looking at this statistic in general, the same research also identified that employees with financial stress were 3.8 times more likely to suffer from anxiety and panic attacks, and 4.9 times more likely agree with the statement, I feel depressed and find it difficult to carry on with life. So essentially, when we're looking at finances and financial well-being, and Lloyd and myself are going to dig a lot deeper into this in today's session, it's something we don't really talk about. It's something that we might shy away from. And at the same time, when it comes to financial concerns, how much of an impact does that have on our mental health and then also our ability to work and our ability to be creative, our ability to really sort of bring as much as we possibly can into the workplace. So there's, for me, a lot more that we need to be doing around financial well-being in organizations. And again, this session is there to help you with that. So what can we do to support our employees with their finances? And of course, Lloyd's obviously here to answer a lot of these questions. So what I'm going to do actually, guys, I'm going to stop sharing our slides just so it's full screen with me and Lloyd. And Lloyd, first question that I've got is, I talk a lot about the stigma around mental health, right? And how we might not know there's a mental health challenge because of the stigma, the silence, people don't really want to talk about it. And I think we can sometimes look at financial well-being in the same way. Like money is quite a dirty word for a lot of people. They don't want to talk about it. So if we're in a position of being in HR, how do we even know when our employees are struggling financially? Like, can we spot the signs?
So I would say that sort of financial issues are probably the same as sort of mental well-being in terms of people. I think because finances are a very personal thing, very seldomly do I meet people that sort of run around sort of talking about their finances and that they've got this or that or so forth. So I think it's maybe looking at that individual, and are there any sort of signs that are outside of the norm in terms of people's attitude? Are they being late to work? Are they having sick days? I think particularly with absence, it might be easy to assume that, oh well, there's just a leave of absence because of X, Y, and Z. But I've certainly seen in the past a company that I worked with for a period of time. Basically, they contacted me because one of their employees had gotten to a point where effectively they didn't even have enough money to put fuel in their car anymore to turn up to the office. So I think it's looking at those particular signs. Are there any sort of changes in terms of how that person, say, may have been, and asking the question to yourself, could that be something that's sort of financially related? but even then, it's still, I would say that when people have financial issues, typically the first person they probably don't want to talk to about it is either someone at work or maybe their line manager, etc. So there are challenges around that, but I think just being open and honest and trying and have a conversation and see if there are any sort of telltale signs, if they mention, well, I'm struggling financially, or mention debt or something along those lines.
Yeah, and I think, like you've touched on debt there. I think for a lot of people that are experiencing debt, the burden that they sort of carry with that, and also I think there's a really important word when it comes to financial concerns of shame, like the shame that they might be carrying because of the situation that they might be in, and the amount it then takes for them to ask for that support, I'm sure is very, very difficult. So firstly, I think, in that example of someone not being able to put fuel in their car and you being alert, that company being alerted to that, then what advice would you give to try and almost get more people talking about finances in the workplace? Like, we do a lot of awareness work around mental health. Would you say that's quite similar when it comes to financial well-being as well?
Yeah, I think I mean, something I'm a big advocate for is just education in general, and I think particularly with finances in the UK, it is very much learned from people around you. So that could be family members, etc. Certainly, when I went to school, I mean, unless I missed a session, I don't remember ever leaving school knowing how to open a bank account, let alone sort of important things that I might come across in life that I might need, like a mortgage or something along those lines. So I think it's just helping educate people. And for me, the thing that concerns me the most on what people do or don't know is just basically some people feel very enclosed and they don't think that they've got any options. I mean, I'll give you an example. About 4 years ago, I sat down, had a chat with someone in a sort of 30-minute session, just us individually, and basically it turned out they were working a second job. Their employer didn't know about it, and it turned out they basically had some debt. Their partner, it was a story of, he was in his overdraft every month, pay packet goes in, tops it up to zero, and then day one in the overdraft again, and they were being charged some exuberant amount of overdraft fees. And just even sort of exploring a conversation saying, well, have you considered consolidating your debt? Have you looked at that? And they said to me, I didn't even know I could do that. And I think some things that some people might take for granted in terms of, oh, well, people must know that you can and can't do this. Well, actually, I wouldn't assume anything because, again, it's something that is learned from family and your environment. So I think that's an important thing to bear in mind when talking to people, is that if, say, for example, if you spend all your money every month, or if you're a good saver, or if you do X, Y, and Z, I would say don't assume that other people are like that, because I found that everyone does things completely differently. Yeah,
we all have different, we've spoken about before, financial habits, and, the education around finances is all completely different. But I'm thinking specifically as HR professionals. I'm sure there's lots of HR professionals that might have been had an experience with an employee that might be struggling financially. And I can only imagine what do I do? Because, as you said, there's a lack of education around finances in particular, but also in that situation, I mean, you as a financial advisor, you have that education, but someone in a HR position who doesn't, what can they do? So again, kind of in your experience as HR professionals, what can they do to try and help someone with their finances?
So I think it's really understanding what help is out there for people. So it really depends on what stage of the journey they're at. I mean, it could be in relation to anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be debt. I mean, the things that we see that tends to sort of cause people stress could be things like divorces and so forth. So I think it's maybe having an idea of where you might be able to signpost people to, and just sort of being able to listen, and hopefully sort of put them in touch with the right people or organizations. I mean, with debt management, etc. I've seen someone in the chat put gambling. That's something that I've sort of come across quite frequently as well, with companies with underlying sort of concerns. But there are a lot of sort of like debt management charities and helplines out there where they can assist people. And I think it's really thinking about what is the internal process in terms of if someone comes to us and they are really in sort of dire straits financially, what do we have in place where we can effectively signpost them so they can get the right help?
Is there some good resources out there that you can share, or if we put it together? I know we've got the 5 video series that we'll be sharing out, but I guess it's so individual as well, like you say. But is there like to make HR professionals feel more confident, or whoever's dealing with someone struggling with finances, is there some that you'd recommend?
I personally think that some of the governmental websites can be quite useful. Again, people don't realise there's actually quite a lot of information on pages like Citizens Advice and so forth, where they'll be able to signpost people. But again, I think it really depends on the individual, because each circumstance is going to be completely different. I would probably suggest doing some research and looking at having a number of different options to signpost people to at different points if they come to a particular stage.
Yeah, no, 100%. So yeah, again, it's such an individual thing. It's like you say, it's very similar to mental health, and there are signposting options, but again, it's like figuring out what's there and maybe just doing a bit of research yourself to find out what options there are for employees or for anyone who might come to you as well. I'm just going to jump into the chat box because there's quite a lot coming in. James says, Lloyd's case study is interesting. I guess we need to ensure managers don't give financial advice and do the right signposting, which Lloyd's just said. I think that's really important as well, Lloyd, isn't it? It's like you said, we've all got different education and different mindsets around money and what we do with our money. So if I'm a manager giving advice to someone to put money here and do this and do that without being a financial advisor, it can sometimes be a bit more dangerous than that manager showing them compassion and signposting to someone like you credentials to be able to help.
Yep. And I would say, I mean, in my experience, that's quite, I find that particularly in HR, that's quite a prevalent thing on most people's mind in terms of, I know the one thing that people within HR get inundated with is questions on pensions. And I know there's a fine line between sort of effectively informing someone and sort of overstepping and it potentially being advice. But I think, again, if you've got the right things in place that you can just signpost people to, whether it's information or information only or other organisations, etc., and know that hopefully you're going to get the best support from that, then I think that's good to have.
Yeah, for sure. Just seen a couple more interesting things in the chat box if you've got your eye on that as well, guys. I like this. Lorna says Scouts have recently introduced their first ever financial awareness badge. We'll be doing this for my Cubs group in autumn. I really like that. And then also Kate says MSc and Open University have a free course available on finances. A couple of questions coming in as well, which I'll save and come back to. But if we're staying in the realms of like, what can a business do? What can HR professionals do? What can managers do? I think there's a real misconception that the only way to help someone with their finances is to pay them more. Like you said, you know, as a company, are you going to be the person that they come to if they're struggling financially? So apart from obviously the obvious of I'm going to give you more money as your salary, what are some key points that, again, companies can do to try and help people?
But before I answer that, I mean, just to come back to that, I would say as well, I would say that probably isn't for most people, that is probably not going to help them at all, because I mean, I'm sure we've all seen those stories on the news that someone wins the lottery one day, 3 years later they've spent it all. And I think again, this just goes back to the sort of education piece and people's understanding and mindsets, because I think it's the sort of saying that potentially the more money you have, the bigger the toys get in that sense. It just becomes a number to spend every month for some people. And one of my biggest concerns around debt is, I think you go back a decade or two, and if you wanted something, obviously you could go to the bank and get a loan, but in the main you'd probably have to save up and pay for it. But now everything's instantaneous. You can finance pretty much everything now and pay it, whether it's over a period of time or 3 months. So I think a lot of it comes back to the education piece. So I think having like wellbeing sessions or having like a focus for a month where it might be a particular focus on a piece of financial well-being that might help people, or bringing in external resources. Or I think one of the things that does help companies that have got, say, mental health first aiders, sort of making it known that if anyone wants to sort of just have a chat with them, not that they can obviously sort of give them advice, but if they know where to signpost people to as well, and really sort of try and incorporate it, maybe have like learning lunches where people will come in and give a talk on a particular area. I noticed one of the comments in the chat talks about sort of like banks and stuff like that coming in to provide sessions and so forth. So I think just basically laying on anything that you can that is going to help raise awareness. Again, companies, pension providers, they'll be able to come in and give talks on the pension scheme. And I find, I think if you can help people understand the benefit of, say, the pension scheme or what is available, and you can educate them on what's available. I know it's one of the questions quite early on, I think, before you started talking, is how do you drive people to take up like more of the wellbeing incentives at work? And I think that all comes down to how things are communicated. So really sort of like try and G it up and get as many people on there as possible.
Yeah, for sure. And again, you know, one of the questions that's come in that I've just picked out, and we will do a Q&A at the end, guys, where you can ask Lloyd any questions that you want. I've just picked this one out because I think it's kind of, you know, it's on topic of what we're discussing here. It's from Anna, who says that how do you start the conversation in the workplace about financial well-being against the backdrop of paying charity salaries and no pay awards for 18 months? I'm prepared for some challenge, but don't want the conversations to appear as a provocation. I can't pronounce that word. That's terrible. My English is obviously not very good as my financial intelligence. So with that question, I think it's a really important question because it's similar to like mental health. I've been told many times, Paul, if you come and do a talk for my organization, are you going to open up a can of worms? Are you going to get people talking about their mental health, which causes an issue in the business and causes a bigger issue than they thought they had in the first place? So with that being said, if a company starts doing more about financial well-being and they get that sort of challenge back, have you had any experience with that or seen that happen, and what can they do?
I would just say it probably boils down to positioning, and I would honestly say the experiences that I've had over the last 8 years have only been positive ones. And I think although financials are sort of very sensitive, I think in the right environment where people do sort of feel they can either talk about them, or whether there's exercises that sort of people go through where they're learning new skills and they take away and use them, actually I think that's invaluable. And I would just say it's to do with the positioning. And I would say now, from a timing perspective, it's probably better than any, because I mean the last 12, 18 months with the pandemic, obviously I'm aware that depending on the companies and the sectors, there's been redundancies, obviously there's been furlough, flexi furlough, etc. And I think because so much has changed within that time in general, I think now is probably a good time for people to start talking about it. And if we are going back into a new sense of normality, or what does that new normality look like? Because again, people might find that if they're now working from home 3 days a week rather than being in an office 5 days a week, they might actually save a little bit more money. What can they then do with that? So yeah, I think it's just around the positioning and just making sure that people know that it's going to be a good resource, and it's not a case of that. It's not like going to be like provocative or anything like that.
Yeah, and I think on that question, just from my point of view, Anna, as well, it's knowing that you're probably going to get some challenges, as you've said, but it's weighing up. Can I experience the challenges versus if we don't talk about financial well-being for the next 2 years, how much of an impact is that going to have on our employees as well? I think it's similar to mental health. Like, you know, we can avoid it and we won't get challenges if we put stuff out there. But is that the right strategy longer term? How much of an impact is you doing so I'm going to do? And also Debbie put in the chat box, which I thought was a really good way of positioning, which you've just said, Lloyd, as well, is we always get challenged back when we focus on financial well-being. So we've changed the focus to financial education. So again, I think education is more like you're willing to provide them with some tools to manage their finances rather than financial well-being. Focus on your financial well-being. What are we doing as an organization? Oh, we can't help you there. So I think that position in there is a really good one. And with that, moving on from that, I want to talk about financial education, because you said, walked out of school not knowing how to open up a bank account. I always say I walked out of school knowing how to play the recorder and, how many countries there are in the world, but no one prepared me for dealing with grief at 18, or like you said, debt. I was in debt when I first started my first business, right? And I wasn't prepared for any of that. I didn't have the financial education or the understanding. The only education that I had was watching my mum and dad's behaviours with money, right? My dad was very, very tight with his money. My mum, was someone who took any job, like a cleaning job, carer job, whatever it was, to make a bit of money to buy me the latest Liverpool kit, right? So again, two completely different personalities when it comes to money. So, looking at that, I mean, how important do you think financial education is for humans, for us?
Well, I think it's incredibly important. I mean, I personally, the thing that concerns me the most at the moment, I would say, so talking on the topic of debt, is if you think that, since sort of the mid to late 2000s, I mean, we've lived in a world where interest rates have been ridiculously low. And if you, I mean, when you talk to people that have had property, say in the late 80s, when interest rates were as high as, say, 14%, and you hear stories of people having to sort of go into the bank and say, well, here's my house keys because I can't afford to pay the mortgage anymore. I mean, it concerns me that I think there's at least some of the younger generations that are just so used to write everything on finance and everything's loans, debts, Klarna, or whatever the sort of the payment tools are there that are out there. I think as soon as there could be changes from an interest rate point of view, I think there's going to be a lot of people that are in debt that are going to be in for quite a big shock. So for me, like, education is super important, because I think particularly, the younger we can educate people, but full stop, I think any education, whatever age, is still good. I think it's gonna help people to make more informed decisions and actually think about what they're doing, and not only what the benefit is now, i.e. great, I'm going to go out and buy a new car on finance, but also think about what the sort of potential scenarios might be in the future, or well, what happens if I can't afford to pay that car finance, and so forth. So I think education for me is number one. It's super important.
Yeah, and I think, again, touching on that, I think it was Debbie, I might be wrong here, but Debbie mentioned about the taboo and the stigma around financial well-being being worse than what it is around mental health, right? And I think when you're looking at how do you tackle stigma, I use mental health as an example. How do you tackle the stigma of mental health? Education. Like, you've got to get them to see it in a different way. I didn't understand it, because my education leading up to my dad was, mental illness only affects a tiny amount of people and you never have to worry about that stuff. So then for me to start to look at mental health in a different way, I have to re-educate myself. And I'm sure it's the same with finances. The way you tackle that taboo and that stigma is we have to re-educate ourselves on that. And I know that you've got, I don't know if you did in the end, but plans of writing, kids' books on finances. So do you think it starts really early, like at school? Yeah,
definitely. So on the book front, I've written the book. I just need to get some illustrations done and effectively try and get it published. But I think it really does start at an early age. And I mean, just in a general point, I think if children were educated younger, I think it would probably solve a lot of the problems that we have at the moment in terms of people that do really struggle with finances, because they'll have been taught different options. And I'm not sort of trying to say that kids at school need to learn like I don't know, really complicated stuff like what's the pension lifetime allowance or anything like that, but just the sort of basic things that are going to equip us for life, for our day to day.
Yeah. And I think, again, talking about education as well, guys, when we pop that link in at the end of this webinar, that's 5 videos that's educational focused, looking at, again, how do you track your spend? How do you start to know where that money's going, where the money's coming in? And then at the same time, Lloyd will then set them on a plan of what they can start to do to really take control of their finances. So, that there was a focus on, let's create something educational for your employees. So, I think that's hugely important. I want to ask you one more question, Lloyd, before, I'm going to open up the floor in a minute, but we'll jump back to the slides as well. We spoke a little bit about, if you've won the lottery and you're still more likely to misspend your money, as an example. And someone did mention as well, I think I saw, debt could be £10 for some people. It could be £10,000 for others, right? Or 100,000 people for others as well. And I think that concept in itself is really important, because I'm guessing from a company point of view, if I know that someone is earning a very high salary, there's probably this naivety that they don't need to worry about finances. Like they're okay. So they're in that safe area and I don't need to worry about them. All I need to worry about is the ones that are maybe on the lower salary. What do you think of that? Because again, if someone's paid a lot, should we worry about them? Are they still important when it comes to finances, or should we just think, okay, they've got it covered, they earn a lot of money?
No, I think it's just as important. Again, I've sat down over the years with many different people that earn varying degrees amounts of money, and you meet people that earn sort of 6-figure salaries, and then you sort of ask them, well, what have you got in terms of assets and savings and so forth? And the effective answer I've seen in the past is zero. That they live based on what goes into their account each month. And I think just in general, I think with the sort of society that we live in at the moment, I mean, whether it's social media or whether your next door neighbour's got a new car or whatever, I think there is even more pressure for a lot of people now to sort of keep up with the Joneses in terms of, well, I've got to be seen to be doing this. And that can actually drive debt in quite a few scenarios, I think, in terms of, right, I need to finance this new car or so forth, or I need to really stretch myself and get as big a mortgage as possible so I can go and buy a bigger house or something like that, rather than potentially maybe just being happy with what they've got for the time being, saving some money and then trying to do that at a later date when it might be more sort of comfortable. I mean, sadly, I met some people sort of during the last sort of 12 to 18 months where there's a particular couple that I met, and sadly one of them had been made redundant. The other one had been put on furlough. And I mean, I was really worried for them because, I mean, they had so much unsecured debt. Their mortgage was pretty much as high as it could be. And by the time I'd met them, pretty much everything was already on a payment holiday. So they were sort of keeping by at that point. And yeah, I mean, sort of the person that had been made redundant, I basically said, look, I would really be considering trying to get a job doing whatever you can do at this point in time, because getting some money through the door is going to be better than no money, quite frankly. So yeah, I would be just as concerned.
Yeah, and again, I think lots of links again back into mental health there, that just because someone's a top performer or someone's a CEO does not mean they're immune to mental illness, right? It's going to be the same. So I think, like you've just said there, no matter how much money they're potentially making within your organization, everyone could be at risk of financial worries and financial concerns and everything that comes with that as well. We've spoken about this, and I'll just quickly share personally, my experience with money was like, when I first started my first business, it was just purely, as you said, right, I'm earning more money now, so I'm going to get a bigger house, I'm going to rent a bigger house, I'm going to buy a fancier car and everything. And I got myself into a very, very difficult situation with money, so much so that I had to just be honest with my wife and at that time and be like, I'm struggling, and that sort of shame that comes with that, I think, is why so many people ignore their debt and ignore their money worries, right? And that was all, like you said, keeping up with the Joneses, making sure that I had a nice house, making sure that everything was fine. And the reason why I started to do the mental health work was because I learned that and I stripped all of my expenses all the way back. So then you're not chasing it. You can do something you love. You can do something you're passionate about. and not so much worry about, as you say, chasing that next bit of money because you have such a high expensive lifestyle that you're living. So I think that's hugely important for people to realize as well. Mm-hmm. So let me come back to the slides now, guys. If you've got any questions, think about them now. Don't put them in the chat box just yet. I'll come to them in just a second. But I really want to sort of touch on a little bit more here. There's some really good questions coming in already, which I'll pick up on. But for joining us today, what we're doing at Everymind at Work is we're going to be offering a wellbeing webinar that we deliver to our clients. And, these wellbeing webinars, I'll elaborate on more just a little bit. We run various different topics. They're all interactive. We use anonymous polling during the sessions to be able to anonymously find out how your employees are feeling or how they approach a certain sort of topic of wellbeing. And what we're doing for the attendees of this session only is, if you will book a wellbeing session with Everymind, what we're going to do is we're also going to give you a financial wellbeing webinar and session with Lloyd completely free. So these are sessions that Lloyd will typically charge for, but he'll come into your organization, deliver obviously an online webinar to give them some tips on finances as well. And that's a 1-hour webinar to help them with their financial wellbeing. So when it comes to the webinars that we deliver, the sessions that we deliver, there's so many different topics, and I saw some names. I've delivered talks, and we've delivered talks to some of you here already on core mental well-being, mental health, resilience, goal setting, stress management, mindfulness, imposter syndrome. We've got sessions on goal setting, returning to work. There's so many sessions that we've now created and deliver to many different organizations. And the cost for a webinar is £500 for you guys, if you obviously take that up today. And again, the special deal there is when you take on one webinar, you also get another one for free. And that session will be with Lloyd to help your employees with their finances as well. So guys, if you want to find out more about that, I'm going to drop my email in the chat box and we can obviously pick that up. Just drop me an email, paulm@everymindatwork.com. For that, just let me know, special offer, buy one wellbeing session, and then you'll get the financial wellbeing one for free. We didn't want to end it there. We also have decided to offer a 3-month free trial to our wellbeing app. So the Everymind app is there to basically support your employees in a proactive way anonymously. It's mental health support in their pockets whenever they need it, sits on their phone. We completely brand it to your business. And it's really a supportive tool for them to help them with their mental health. And again, there's lots of different topics on there, from financial wellbeing to resilience and more as well. And this 3-month trial is something that we used to do. We've pulled it for the last, I'd say, 8 to 12 months. But definitely sort of get in touch if you want to find out more about that. Easy sign up, super simple for your employees to sign up to the app. This is only on the app itself rather than our training and our workshops. Doesn't take them long at all to sign up to the application. And really the benefits of what we're trying to create is the Everymind score, the data that you're going to get. The data is simply for us a way of helping you anonymously find out where your employees need a bit more support. And then as a team, we'll try and support that for you to highlight some of the key areas that they might need some more training and support with as well. Personalizing all the content to them and obviously delivering those online wellbeing sessions too. And for all of our partners that might be here today, one of the key things that we really sort of try to be is more than a service provider. What we mean by that is we're more than just an app. You get a customer success representative that will manage your organization to help you with your strategy and help you get the most out of this relationship. We'll deliver a free launch session for your employees. We provide wellbeing comms throughout the whole year. So whether it's like free resources, if you think that we give a lot of free resources away on these webinars, when you're a partner, you get a lot more. So again, when you're looking at that, there's so much more that you get in terms of value and consistent ongoing support. We never know what's around the corner when it comes to mental health for our organization. So we're there to be your partner to help you with that as well. And we work with many organizations, as I've said, from large organizations to smaller organizations. And really, again, our sort of mission is to try and really help employees with their mental health, but at the same time, help you become an extension of the HR department and really sort of help you manage mental health and wellbeing within your organization as well. So with that, guys, if you do want to find out more, if you do want to reach out, as I've said, we're not a partner, we're a partner, we're not a service provider. Definitely sort of reach out, drop me an email, paulm@everymindatwork.com. Just ping an email, say I'm interested in the app or I'm interested in a session, and I'll be able to give you some more pricing, more information, find out more about your organization and how we can help. And again, just putting it out there, we wanted to run an offer on this webinar today. So Ruth, yeah, as Sam said, definitely reach out and we'll be able to give you a bit more information about that as well. And Deanne says, can highly recommend the app. Paul and the team are wonderful, have some fantastic knowledge and resources. Deanne, thank you. I didn't pay you for that. I appreciate that little sort of testimonial in there as well. So guys, just putting in here, what's been your biggest takeaway for the session? But then more importantly, if you have a question, please put it in the chat box now. I'm going to pull up one of these questions, Lloyd, that I sort of saved earlier. It's from Laura. She said, I'd be interested in how we can help and reply to employees asking for loans to help them out of a financial crisis. Have you got anything that you would add to that?
So I'd say that could be quite a sort of quite a tricky one in terms of if it was something you had a set provider that you had sort of had an agreement with, then that I would say could potentially muddy the waters a bit there, because if you had an employee that say took a loan out and it was kind of linked with not linked with the company, but effectively someone that you kind of recommended, that could cause problems in the future if it was something that they then sort of went on to sort of have like further debt issues. I mean, one of the things that you could look to implement is maybe like potentially a panel. So you could say, well, look, here's a panel of say lenders or banks that we've got a connection with that have said that they're happy to talk to our employees and provide sort of debt advice on from that point of view. Because then again, it's impartial. So if you've got say 3 or more, then it's down to them to sort of pick up the phone and contact the relevant organisation. Yeah,
I think as well, like again, it's a sort of quite a broad question, but you know, if people are asking for loans, it's kind of again the educational piece, I guess, around that. Is that like, you know, why are they asking for that loan? Is it because, you know, they want to use it to clear debt, or use it to help them financially, or as you say, is it something they want to do for instant gratification as well?
Yeah, I would say as well. I mean, if depending on, because it depends on the individual and sort of how you felt about asking them, but you could, if you felt comfortable asking them, saying, oh, like what, sort of trying to delve a bit deeper in terms of what they need the loan for. I suspect if someone is in financial difficulty, that they're probably not going to tell you the real reason why they need the money. It will probably be could be, well, I don't know, I'd imagine probably, oh, I'm going to do some renovations or buy a new car or something like that. But yeah, that could be a good sort of starting point, because if they feel confident enough, then they may sort of elaborate a bit more, and again, it could mean that from a signposting point of view, that actually signposting them to get a loan could end up sort of making things worse, where it might be, well, actually, look, go and talk to like a debt management charity or so forth. So.
Yeah, and Caroline's asked the similar questions, so hopefully that answers it. Caroline as well. She said, recently asked for a person. Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, it's going to depend on. I guess. I mean, I do work with companies where they have lent money to individuals and so forth, and I would say it really depends on sort of how. I guess how comfortable the business felt with that. If it's something that they weren't, then I would just say, look, unfortunately, this is our policy, or this is the line that we take. If it was potentially, I mean, the loans that I've seen in the past where they have done them, it's kind of almost been like an advance of sort of like sales commissions and stuff like that. So I think it ultimately depends on how you feel as an organisation. But it's probably. The only thing that I would say is if you do something for one person, then I would probably expect that there's going to be more that will follow, because news travels. So if it's something that I would say, if you're going to do it, adopt it as a company policy, or just don't do it at all, and then just signpost people.
That's a really good point. I think it's a hard question because it's probably case by case, isn't it? But you do it once and more travels and more people want the company to loan them money, then you know that's where it can become quite challenging as well. So there's some questions coming in, but before I do that, I also want to echo what a couple of people have said. The community that these webinars are creating, for me, gives me goosebumps more than the webinars themselves. And what I mean by that is just to see everyone coming up with their own ideas and sharing stuff in the chat box. is really, really important. I equally saw, I think it was Debbie and someone else like reconnecting and saying, I haven't seen you since Kodak days, I think it was, which again kind of made me giggle to myself. But again, seeing that community element that these webinars bring, I think is really important, because I think as people in HR, or even if you're just an employee or work within organizations, we can feel quite alone sometimes. And, bringing this together in these sessions, I think is sort of, for me, really, really good to see. I've got another question here as well. Can you recommend any tools or education sites for children? That was from Amy. Apart from your book that should be coming out soon, right?
So there are, forget the book, that's a work in progress. There are some useful tools out there, and I'd probably say, just as an additional sort of to add into the resource, it would probably be easier. I can just collate some sites that can be added on for people that they might find useful, whether it's for children, adults, etc. So it'd probably be easier for me to collate, because I think it's important to not just have most websites are different, so I wouldn't say there's a one size fit all website. They all kind of cover different bits, but there's 3 websites I've got in mind that I can collate together. Yeah,
and I've just seen Sam's put in there that he's going to put all of the suggestions that have been added to the chat box into a document, and we'll ping that out to all of you via email. So Lloyd, what we'll do is we'll include some of those links in that document as well. Got another question here from Emily. You mentioned looking for changes in others as a sign of struggling financially. What changes in behaviour can we look out for that might indicate they're struggling financially?
I would signpost that as sort of just the people with just mental well-being, sort of maybe mental health struggles as well. They tend to are very interconnected. So again, it could be someone that it could be tired every day. I mean, I one of the companies that we in the past, basically I'd heard from some of the other sort of team members that this person was always falling asleep during team meetings and stuff like that, and they all thought that they'd been sort of going out partying hard at the weekend and so forth, and eventually they came and sat down and had a conversation with me, and it turned out it was money worries that were keeping them awake. So I think just any change in behaviour, and that doesn't necessarily have to be in terms of if someone's ill or late or tired or mood swings, etc. I mean, if you've noticed that all of a sudden someone, unless they've told you they won the lottery, they start turning up wearing sort of Louis Vuitton gear every day, and they've bought a brand new state-of-the-art car or whatever. If it looks outside of the norm, then I would just sort of try and have a conversation and sort of be in here to listen to, because it might be that there's something underlying there. And I would say, I would just say for those people that are approached by staff in general and are approachable people, then usually they'll be the sorts of people within an organisation that people will probably tend to tell those things about, rather than necessarily line managers or directors, etc. So tying that back into sort of if you've got people that are sort of mental health first aiders there, that if they're approachable people, or maybe there might just be people within the organisation that you think, well, actually they seem to be quite popular, and sort of chat with people, maybe ask them if they're happy to sort of be a mental health champion or something along those lines.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I think the signs are very hard, aren't they? But like you said, no one's going to be shouting in the office, I'm in debt, or I didn't sleep last night because I'm worried about money. So it's those more subtle behaviors, like you say, maybe, feeling tired or not being themselves. In meetings, you also mentioned once when we spoke about, potentially them coming in and saying they don't want to contribute to their pension. And typically we might just accept that, but that could be something a lot more underneath that as well, right? Yeah,
and I think I know on the sort of chat, I've seen a lot about sort of stress and anxiety and so forth. I mean, I've a few years ago I suffered quite badly with anxiety, and the one thing that I found with anxiety when it was at its worst, your default mindset is that this is the worst thing ever. It's a case of your mind just sort of goes into overdrive, and you think you're automatically just thinking this is the end of the world. And actually the sort of the things that really helped me were just, well, talking to someone, which is what I went and did. And sort of talking to them, you kind of realize, well, look, what's the likelihood it's going to be the end of the world? And also, what are the options available? I think, again, by educating people learn what options are available, and then they realize that, oh, well, actually, do you know what? This might not be great, but it's probably not going to be like the end of the world as we know it.
Yeah, it's a really good point. There's an amazing question just come in that I will go to, but just quickly coming back to those signs. If you was on the last session, we did the Wheel of Life exercise, and the Wheel of Life exercise looks at, it's a self-awareness exercise, typically highlighting the areas that you feel like you're lacking in a bit more and you need to focus on a bit more. And obviously financial well-being was one of those key areas. And I think, as you've just said there, Lloyd, even when we looked at the statistics at the beginning of this session, the likelihood that someone who's financially troubled to deal with anxiety, panic attacks, low mood, depression is a lot more heightened. So again, mental health challenges, I think, is kind of like at the top. And then what's the kind of key reasons behind that? And, I speak to many, companies that have mental health first aiders, and you find out, okay, what's the underlying reason that a lot of people might be struggling? And financial concerns are always up there. It's like a really high percentage. So again, when you're looking at those specific signs and symptoms, I wouldn't say there's, as you say, anything relevant to like money, more so just like in their behaviors, their overall sort of mental health and mood as well. This question that I wanted to get to, because I just think it's quite an interesting question actually. Kay says, what are your thoughts on having financial first aiders in the workplace? My approach to the role would be purely from a signpost point of view, but are we opening up ourselves to more of a problem?
Well, no, because I think at the end of the day, do you know what? And so not that it was financial related with the sort of anxiety and stress that I had, but do you know what? One of the biggest and bestest things for me was when that happened. A lot of the stuff that I spoke about, I'd never actually told anyone never told anyone before, and actually sitting down and talking to someone. I mean, I was in tears at the end, but it was tears of relief. So I think just having someone there that can basically be impartial. So if you've got a company policy to say, well, look, these are the signposts, and you've got, say, a number of, whether it's debt management charities or signposts to several of each potentially, then I would not underestimate people talking and how invaluable that might be. Just having an ear, someone to listen to you, because I would imagine chances are, if it's going to be financial sort of issues or mental well-being issues, etc., chances are, I'd imagine that person probably hasn't told anyone before or spoken to many people about it. And again, I think that probably goes back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of people are just so scared now of being judged. So I think if they've got what feels ultimately, if it feels like a safe person to talk to, they talk to them about sort of financial issues. If it's a financial first aider, or a combination of, if you've got, say, a financial first aider and a mental health first aider as two separate sort of roles, or whether it's combined into one, I would say that would be invaluable.
I think as well, like just going on to some of the comments I'm seeing as well, it's like, for us, mental health first aiders are effective, but at the same time, what I truly believe in more is champions and ambassadors, and rather than this is just us brainstorming here, financial first aid, where it might be come to me when you're willing to talk about your financial struggles, like having those champions open up about their own experiences with money. Like, again, when you might talk about your own experiences with money and your own concerns, that might encourage me to talk about mine as well. So I think it's a really good concept and something to look more into, Kate, personally. And like you say, could it be ambassadors or champions and those sharing their stories? One of them might be on the financial concerns that they've experienced and how they manage that. And that can encourage other people to talk about theirs as well. So really, really like that question. I think looking at questions, I think that's all we're going to get to today. Guys, if you want to reach out to me personally, paulm@everymindatwork.com. That's whether you want the wellbeing session. That's whether you want the 3-month trial to the app and the partnership. That's if you just want to say, Paul, can you help us with this? Or what's your thoughts on this? Or can you share more information to Lloyd? All of that good stuff. Drop me an email. I'm also going to get Sam to pop in that link into the chat box now to that 5-day video series. But we'll also be sending out, as we've said, a replay to this session. We'll send out the video series link as well that you can share with all of your employees. And then we're also, by the looks of it, Sam's going to create a resource guide of all of the chats, all of the suggestions that are in there as well. Sam, your link is going to get flooded in just a minute. I don't know whether I can pin that. No, I can't. But Lloyd, anything from you to finish up? I really appreciate your time today.
No, thank you for inviting me to host this with you. And the thing that you just previously said, the one thing that I think openly talking about things, whether it's sort of mental health, mental well-being, financial well-being, I think the more that people talk, or if there's people, I would say if there's people within your organization that have had issues, that are happy to talk about it and maybe sort of are happy to talk to others and share their experiences, that normally opens sort of like the floodgates in terms of people talking about particular topics. And the only reason I say that, I mean, if I take Paul as a prime example, when I read Paul's book and as I was getting to know him, automatically I just felt like a massive barrier was broken down, and I could just talk to him about things that had happened to me in the past, which I don't think for someone that you've only just really recently met, I don't think you would typically normally do that. So in terms of how things are at the moment within society, I think the more people can talk about it, the better it is going to be for everyone, regardless of the topic.
Yeah, I believe in that. I believe in that so much, as you know, Lloyd. Good stuff. Really appreciate your time today, guys. We do these monthly sessions. You've already signed up to one. Definitely share the word, spread the word. We do every first Wednesday at 1 p.m. Spread the word of these sessions, guys. You've already seen what the community is like in the chat box in particular. So send it to your colleagues, send it to anyone that you think would benefit from these sessions. And we're going to take your suggestions as well, and let you know the topic for next month's webinar very soon as well. So guys, thank you so much. Like I say, do drop me an email if you want to find out more about how we can support you, how we can help you. And if you're interested in that offer of a wellbeing session, and then also the free financial wellbeing session with Lloyd as well. Guys, just drop me an email, paulm@everymindatwork.com. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. And Lloyd, thank you once again to you. Really appreciate it. And thanks to Sam and everyone else doing all the bits that they can do in the chat box as well. Good stuff. Cheers, Lloyd. Appreciate it, mate. Speak soon.
Yeah. Take care, everyone. Bye.